Welcome to the deep dive, where we take these incredible stacks of sources, historical logs, bits of folklore, dense academic papers, and we try to break them down into something essential, something compelling.
And our mission today is, well, it's a journey into a really unique incident. We're going deep into the domestic life of 19th century Japan.
It's a story that honestly challenges how you think about collective behavior and even the power that objects can have over us.
We're focusing on a multi-generational mystery from the rugged Noto Peninsula. It's formerly known as the Ichisuke incident.
And this isn't just local superstition, right? That's the key here.
No, not at all. We have archival evidence, we have petitions, maritime logs, all detailing this fisherman Ichisuke and his entire family. Their lives just became, well, they became centered around this strange shared ritual.
A ritual of just complete stillness every single night.
And it was all focused on one specific object, the traditional Japanese storage chest, the Tansu.
It's a stunning set of documents, really. You have the raw, just the confused voice of Ichisuke himself in this formal petition from the 1890s.
And then you have the complete opposite, the sober, almost chillingly objective observations of a ship's captain from 1905.
And then we take this massive leap, 70 years into the future, to the 1970s, where you see folklorists and psychologists trying to impose some kind of rational framework on something that feels, well, completely inexplicable.
And that's where the deep dive really begins for us. Because the sources, they force you to ask this core question.
Yeah.
What happens when a foundational object of your home, something that represents stability and family wealth, the Tansu, what happens when it stops being just a piece of furniture?
And becomes the absolute center of a shared, unspoken, and deeply transformative ritual.
Exactly.
So we're going to navigate all of this. We'll start with the initial terror that Ichisuke felt. We'll track his very strange departure and his even stranger return.
And then we'll finally land on those frameworks, the ones Dr. Emiko Kobayashi proposed in the late 70s, to try and make sense of what the newspapers at the time were calling the Tansu phenomenon.
So let's start at the beginning. Let's lay the scene. It's around 1890 on the Noto Peninsula.
To really get the tragedy of Ichisuke, you have to start with how normal everything was before it all began.
Right.
The village records, they describe him not as some troubled man, but as a model citizen. He was a diligent fisherman, deeply devoted to his large family, which was, a huge responsibility.
A man of the sea and the home. His whole life was defined by hard work, by tradition.
That stability is so important because the thing that completely fractured his world, his sanity, it came from the most innocent source imaginable.
His youngest son.
His youngest son, who's just 3 years old. And the trauma, which he describes in his formal petition, document 4, wasn't violence or sickness.
It was stillness.
It was stillness. The petition and the oral histories, they all line up on this. The child started this peculiar nightly habit. He would climb up onto the large ancestral Tansu chest in the back room.
And he would just sit there.
Silently. Until the first light of day.
And we should pause on the Tansu itself for a moment, because this isn't, a small footstool we're talking about.
No, absolutely not. A Tansu is a heavy piece of furniture. It's dark lacquered, multi-drawered, often with these big decorative iron fittings and rings.
They were symbols of family wealth, of security, continuity. You kept your kimonos, your documents, your valuables in them. They are imposing objects.
They're high and they're solid. And that height is critical to the story.
Because for a 3-year-old to climb onto it every single night, that's a real effort.
A huge effort. And the posture he adopted was so specific, a detail that just recurs through the entire narrative. His legs were folded into a sort of formal Caesar position, hands on his knees, eyes open, but...
Unseeing, that's the word from the petition.
Exactly. Unseeing. It was a meditative posture, a formal posture. Definitely not how a comfortable or sleeping child would sit.
So Ichisuke's first reaction, as he details it, is just classic parental frustration. He calls it childish whimsy.
Sure. What else would you think?
Right. So he tries everything. He's yelling, he's scolding, he tells his wife, keep the boy in his futon.
He even admits to spanking him. He recounts his fury. He says, I spanked him and warned him severely, but none of it worked.
The discipline was useless.
Completely. The child went back to that chest with this unwavering obedience every single night.
And the futility of it all is just made worse by his wife's reaction. This, for me, is the first real sign of how isolated he's about to become.
It's a chilling detail in the petition. He confronts her. He's looking for an ally, right? Someone to share the worry or the discipline.
And she gives him nothing.
Nothing but a vague smile and silence. She wasn't afraid. She was accepting. It's as if she was already inside the experience, you know?
Yeah.
She had this serene, quiet understanding that he just couldn't access.
And that silent acceptance, that little smile, that's the moment this whole thing turns from a weird habit into a full-blown domestic contagion.
It starts to spread sequentially through the whole family. And remember, this is a big family. 8 children, from a toddler all the way up to a 16-year-old.
Ichisuke's petition just charts the escalating horror. He talks about waking up and finding more of them. First, it was a few more.
Then he writes about finding 5 of them, all sitting together on that one large Tansu, mimicking the youngest's exact rigid posture.
Silent, unmoving, and completely unresponsive when he's calling their names when he's trying to shake them awake.
Later oral accounts use the phrase still as dolls.
That's terrifying. The speed of it, the uniformity of it, speaks to something really powerful, like a shared compulsion or maybe a shared relief.
I mean, imagine the scene. Ichisuke is frantic, he's shouting in the dark, and he's surrounded by 5, then eventually all 8 of his children just sitting there, pale, motionless, absorbed in this silent communion with a piece of furniture.
And that wasn't even the peak, was it?
No. The phenomenon escalated even further. It eventually encompassed his elderly parents.
This is a detail Ichisuke really emphasizes in his petition, because it seems to just defy physical logic.
It does. He notes his parents were bent with age, suggesting they were frail, they had severe physical limitations, and yet somehow they managed to climb the imposing height of that chest to join the vigil.
Which is a crucial detail for the academics later on, because it kind of rules out simple physical mimicry. This wasn't just kids copying each other.
No, the compulsion was powerful enough to override severe physical decline, so the transformation of his household was now total. Every single person, his wife, all 8 children, and his 2 elderly parents were participating.
The entire family unit, once this pillar of tradition and stability, was now dedicated to this bizarre, silent, nightly ritual.
And Ichisuke.
He's the sole observer, the only person who doesn't understand and doesn't participate. He is literally outside the boundary of his own family's shared reality.
His petition to the village headman, Saito. It's just a desperate plea. He's looking for intervention, for some historical precedent, anything.
Or just for someone to validate that he's not the one going insane. He wants an authority to tell him this is an illness, an affliction that needs an external cure.
Because the internal structure of his family, the very thing that should have supported him, had completely rejected him. The tragedy for him in 1890 wasn't just what was happening to his family.
It was his inability to join them.
Exactly. His profound inability to join them in what for them seemed to be a state of total serenity. He was the anomaly, isolated by his own lack of peace.
So, if that initial phase was all about this unnerving silence and stillness, the next escalation introduces a sound. A distinct physical auditory signal that proves this whole thing was active and intentional.
Right. We moved to a night with a full moon when, as he describes it, the environment itself seemed to be participating.
And he's woken up by a sound.
He says he was violently awakened, not by a sight, but by a sound, a very specific, rhythmic, metallic sound.
He describes it as katan, katan.
Katan, katan, like the heavy metal rings or the fittings on a Tansu chest clinking together. And this sound, this auditory signal, it's incredibly consistent. It's almost like the theme music for the entire incident.
This is the sound that draws him, terrified, into the back room. And what he sees there is his entire family in action.
They're no longer just sitting. All 11 of them are moving, working together, guided, as the petition says, by shared, silent purpose.
And they are physically transporting a second enormous Tansu chest into the house.
Now, just think about the sheer physical effort involved here. 2 frail, elderly people, 8 kids of all different sizes, and a middle-aged woman all moving this massive, heavy, lacquered piece of furniture.
It's coordinated, it's intentional labor, and where did it even come from?
Well, the petition says they were bringing it up from the beach, which suggests it was either, recovered from the sea, maybe from a shipwreck or just as driftwood, or it was deliberately brought there and hidden until this very moment.
That detail just demolishes any idea that this was simple passive hysteria.
Absolutely.
You don't spontaneously hallucinate the coordinated, heavy lifting of a real object from the coastline. This was a dedicated, ritualistic act. It was designed to expand the vigil.
And with that second chest installed, the entire back room is now just dominated by these 2 huge pieces of furniture. And immediately the family settles. They divide themselves between the 2 chests.
And go right back to it, sitting motionless, pale, and silent. The family had now achieved its perfect ritual equilibrium.
But the very act that brought them into perfect unity, that just alienated Ichisuke even more, he was the sole dissenter.
He realized he couldn't endure it, the lack of understanding, the silence, this serene world that just completely excluded him.
The terror of the known, his family's strange peace, became greater for him than the terror of the unknown.
And his response was flight. Complete and total flight.
The oral histories confirm it. One night, just completely overwhelmed, he ran. He fled his home, his family, his village. He took nothing but the clothes he was wearing.
And he sought a life as far removed from the static-rooted nature of the Tansu as you could possibly get.
The life of a sailor, defined by constant motion, by rootlessness.
It's such a profound psychological move, isn't it? He rejects the domestic anchor, the Tansu, and chooses the total instability of the open ocean.
His escape, I don't think it was a rejection of his family as people, but a rejection of the peace they had found without him. He was trying to find control by seeking motion.
And we know from the records that he eventually did. He got work on a cargo vessel, trying to bury this bizarre history beneath the waves.
So now we have to execute a massive chronological jump. We're moving forward about 15 years.
And we're moving from the localized, almost folkloric confusion of the Noku Peninsula to the cold, objective reality of a ship's logbook.
Our source here is Captain Jiro Tanaka's official log of the SS Kaido Maru, and at this point, it's anchored just off Cape Noto.
This shift in perspective is just invaluable, isn't it? We go from the frantic, subjective petition of a distressed fisherman to the professional, sober observations of a mariner.
And we're focused on one specific entry. It's entry number 147, dated September 28, 1905.
Captain Tanaka's records, they confirm that Ichisuke had been on his crew for nearly 5 years at this point.
And the log paints a remarkably consistent picture of him. Diligent, reliable, reserved, a good sailor, but someone who almost never spoke of his past.
So he had successfully rebuilt a life, a stable, if rootless life.
But, and this is crucial, despite having fled, the captain's notes confirm that Ichisuke had maintained a quiet but very firm financial link to the family he left behind.
He consistently sent a portion of his wages back home to Noto.
He fled the ritual, but he never ever abandoned his duty as a provider. The connection was severed but not fully broken.
So on the night of September 28th, the Kaito Maru is anchored about a kilometer offshore from his old village.
And the conditions are just atmospheric. A light fog is obscuring the coastline. And around 23.0 hours, Captain Tanaka sees Ichisuke standing at the bow.
And he's not just standing there. The captain observes him straining. He's rigid, agitated. He's trying to hear something over the quiet sound of the sea.
When Captain Tanaka approaches him, Ichisuke's words are the first sign that his past has finally caught up with him. He murmurs, "The sound, Captain. I hear it again."
Now, a skeptical mind, a modern mind, would just dismiss that as delusion, right? A stressed sailor hearing things in the fog.
Of course. But Captain Tanaka, a trained officer, he records the moment that he too heard it. After listening intently, he confirms hearing a faint, rhythmic, metallic clinking.
The unmistakable, repetitive katan, katan, katan sound.
Originating from the water below the ship.
This detail is everything. It's the ultimate objective confirmation from an outside source that the sound, the specific acoustic signature of the vigil, was real, or at least it was shared by an external observer.
It was the signal, audible across a kilometer of water and 15 years of separation, calling Ichisuke back home.
And then the visual.
And the visual. Emerging from the light fog, just below the port side, comes a small, traditional rowboat.
And the occupants are precise. The captain estimates 11 individuals.
The elderly couple, the middle-aged woman, and the 8 children. The complete intact family unit 15 years later.
And they weren't distressed or shouting for him. They were dressed simply, and their faces were pale but serene in the moonlight reflecting off the water.
As they drew alongside the hull of this huge cargo ship, they delivered their message. And it was in soft, unified voices.
The invitation was almost ritualistic in its calmness.
"Father, we have come to welcome you home. Please return with us. There is nothing to fear." They weren't accusing him of abandonment. They were offering him peace.
And then comes the condition. The one ultimate condition for his return, and it's tied completely to the very object he had fled all those years ago.
They told him, "We have brought your Tansu chest. Sit upon it, and we will row you back. You will understand everything then."
The chest was the mandatory ticket home.
And Ikisia's reaction, it just speaks volumes about the 15 years he spent in constant motion. Captain Tanaka recorded his expression as a mixture of relief and resignation.
He accepted his fate instantly.
He told the captain, I must go with them. I see now that I cannot stay away. The rootlessness, it seems, had become a greater terror for him than the strange stillness he left behind.
So he descends the rope ladder, and there, in the center of this small boat, they had actually placed a large, aged Tansu chest. It was the centerpiece of their little maritime procession.
And Ichisuke immediately sits down on it. He adopts that precise, familiar posture, legs folded, hands on his knees. The sailor who sought constant motion had finally found stillness, sitting on the very symbol of the home he'd abandoned.
And the family just instantly begins rowing back toward the shore, the ritual now complete.
The captain, he just records Ichisuke's discharge as being due to personal reasons, and he notes the eerie coordination and the peacefulness of the entire event.
His final log entry is so poignant. He says he hopes Ichizuke found the peace he seemed to be seeking.
Which just cements this idea that this was a return to wellness for him, not a hostile abduction.
So the Kaitomaru log serves as this absolute historical confirmation. The entire family, after 15 years, was intact. They were still committed to the ritual, and they were capable of retrieving their lost member through this peaceful, ritualized invitation.
Centered always on the chest and that specific metallic sound.
So now we have to make another sharp transition. We're moving from those historical eyewitness accounts of 1905 to the rigorous, systematic analysis of the late 1970s.
For nearly 70 years, the Ichisuke incident really just existed as local folklore. But by the late Meiji and early Showa periods, the sheer persistence of the narrative, the specificity of it, caught the attention of the Japanese Cultural Heritage Foundation.
And the question is, why then? Why did a 70-year-old story suddenly warrant academic funding?
It's because the details were too specific, right? The consistent location, the precise auditory cue, the katan sound, and the absolute centrality of a physical, non-living object. This was not a standard ghost story. It was a proper ethnographic puzzle.
So enter Dr. Emiko Kobayashi, a senior folklorist with a background in social psychology.
And she led this preliminary analysis. She recognized that any real understanding had to begin by establishing what she called the specific behavioral phenomenology, basically defining the behavior that just resisted any simple classification.
Okay, so let's break down the unique characteristics she established. First, the behavior was strictly nocturnal. This is vital.
Absolutely. During the day, everyone involved, the wife, the kids, the elders, they functioned completely normally. They're fishing, they're farming, their household chores. There was no noted impairment at all.
But the nighttime presentation was just utterly abnormal. She consistently described the subjects as pale and stiff, and that they resembled dolls because of their rigidity.
And they adopted that specific, formal, Caesar-like posture, a posture that, in Japanese culture, signifies respect, formality, deep attention, or stillness. It is not a casual state of rest.
And the entire event was always, inextricably linked to the physical object. Dr. Kobayashi noted that the Tansu wasn't just the setting for this, it was the functional center.
Right. The acoustic signal of the metal rings, the katan, was the summons. And the fact that they went and got a second chest proves that they were actively shaping their environment to facilitate this ritual.
So because the behavior just resisted any easy cultural or medical labels, Dr. Kobayashi proposed 3 systematic analytical frameworks in her 1978 report. We should probably dig into these.
We have to. Let's start with the most intuitive one, but the one that she ultimately finds insufficient. Collective psychogenic illness, or CPI. Basically, mass hysteria.
This one sounds compelling at first, doesn't it? I mean, CPI involves a group of people, usually in an isolated, high-stress community, sequentially adopting some kind of strange, non-functional behavior.
And the Noto Peninsula, a rugged fishing region with demanding, high-risk work, it certainly fits that stress profile.
A classic case of CPI, like the old dancing plagues or localized fainting fits, is triggered by a shared stressor, and it manifests physically. The rapid spread among the children fits that pattern perfectly.
It does. But Dr. Kobayashi found the Ichisuke incident to be highly atypical, almost to the point of excluding it from the CPI category for 3 big reasons.
Okay, what's the first one?
The sheer duration. CPI events are typically acute. They last for days or weeks, maybe a few months before they just burn out. The Ichisuke incident persisted for at least 15 years. It maintained its exact ritual over a generation, which is virtually unheard of.
And the second reason?
The lack of negative somatic symptoms. CPI is usually marked by things like fainting, twitching, seizures, hyperventilation, or people reporting extreme pain.
Ichisuke's family showed none of that. Their state was described as serene, motionless, and peaceful. It seemed to be a state of positive emotional relief, not one of affliction.
And thirdly, and maybe most importantly, the coordinated, goal-oriented action, the whole family working together to move that massive second Tansu chest from the
It
beach.
required intentionality.
It required intentionality and physical functionality that completely contradicts the typical lack of control you see in mass hysteria. This suggests a functional belief system, not a simple breakdown of everyone's nervous systems.
So, having largely dismissed CPI, where does she go next?
She moves to her second framework, ritualization and shared belief. This perspective suggests that the behavior was a spontaneously emerged domestic ritual, a kind of coping mechanism that the family unit developed together in response to their communal stress.
And in this view, the wife's vague smile and silence becomes the crucial piece of evidence.
Exactly. She wasn't being afflicted. She was showing the first sign of understanding. She was the key participant in establishing this unarticulated social contract, a shared silent belief that the act of sitting on the Tansu provided some necessary release or peace.
So the Tansu transcends its function as a storage unit. It becomes the ritual locus.
It's a stable, inherited object already associated with security and family history. So by sitting on it so formally, they're performing an act of grounding themselves. It's a deliberate rejection of the chaos and anxiety of their daily lives.
And the fact that the entire family adopts the exact same posture, that just reinforces the strength and the uniformity of this shared belief.
And it explains Ikisuke's isolation perfectly. He was the one who couldn't accept or even perceive the belief system. He saw it as an illness, not a solution. He was excluded not by force, but by his own dissent, his own lack of internal surrender to the ritual's necessity.
Which takes us to her third and most speculative framework, the one that really pulls this into the realm of agency and material culture.
The artifact agency hypothesis.
This is where things get really fascinating because it challenges that very Western idea that only living things can have agency.
It does. This hypothesis views the Tansu not just as a passive stage for the ritual, but as an active participant, as something that's exerting an influence or at least serving as a necessary conduit for the experience.
And if you connect that back to the cultural significance of the object, it makes a strange kind of sense. A tansu in that era was often one of the family's most valuable, most enduring possessions. It literally holds generations of history and security. It already has a kind of symbolic weight, a symbolic agency.
So the hypothesis suggests that the physical object, the chest, it somehow became functionalized. It was transformed into an instrument or a vessel designed to channel or facilitate this desired state of deep peace.
And the katan sound, then, isn't just a random noise.
No, it's the auditory summons. It's the call, maybe emitted by the movement of the ship, calling the sailor back to the functional ritual object.
Dr. Kobayashi concluded that regardless of the exact cause, the story itself had remained a powerful living tradition even into the 1970s.
And the fact that the local paper, the Noto Daily Chronicle, was calling it the Tansu phenomenon tells you that it had retained a cultural relevance far beyond a simple ghost story.
And crucially, the contemporary resident of the original home, who's called Subject A in the documents, she wasn't just passively sharing history. She was actively perpetuating the belief system. She was inviting modern visitors to experience it themselves.
The story wasn't just about the past. It was a present, active potential.
And those academic frameworks of the 1970s, they gained this profound, unexpected weight when they were validated by a completely external, rational observer in 1979.
Mr. Takumi Watanabe, an architect visiting from Tokyo.
He represents the perfect modern skeptic, doesn't he? A rational urban professional. His research was on the physical structure of traditional Noto architecture, not on its folklore.
And he was actually staying in the centuries-old residence, which gave him direct access to the environment and the descendants.
And he admits in his journal he was suffering from that typical urban malaise, stress, anxiety about work, pressures about the future. He was, ironically, the exact kind of person the Tansu vigils seemed designed to cure.
After dinner one night, the elderly female resident, Subject A, she finishes telling him the full, strange history of Ichisuki and the silent chests.
And then she shifts. She goes from being a historian to being a kind of high priestess.
Mr. Watanabe documented the interaction with startling clarity. He said she looked at him with an unsettling directness. Not a threat, not a warning, but a serene, practical offer.
She said, "Why don't you try to climb up here and sit on the Tansu yourself? Then maybe you'll understand."
That invitation, it frames the entire incident as a necessary practice, not some supernatural affliction. It was functional. And the architect, driven by, professional curiosity, and he said a personal strange compulsion, he agreed. He climbed onto the massive dark lacquered chest.
And what he documents next, meticulously in his journal, is the definitive experiential proof that this ritual achieves a profound subjective change.
He settled into the required posture, legs folded, hands on his knees, and he reported that the transition was immediate and profound.
And he's very clear about what it was not. He says it wasn't sleep or a trance or some state of dissociation. In fact, he said his consciousness remained clear, sharper than usual.
But the existential noise, that pervasive urban anxiety about his career, the city, the future, he says it all just dissolved completely.
That's a critical distinction. He wasn't losing control. He was finding focus.
He described it beautifully. He said he felt a connection, as if the immense weight of accumulated time and history within the wood of the chest exerted a gentle pressure that smoothed out the frantic wrinkles of his own mind.
It was an immediate sense of belonging. He felt linked not just to the current residents, but to all the generations who had lived and struggled within those walls. He realized the vigil wasn't malevolent at all.
It was an invitation into a profound collective stillness.
And for the first time, the architect found himself understanding at Ichisuke, both his original terror and his eventual resignation.
He concluded that Ichisuke's 15 years as a sailor, a life of constant aimless motion, must have seemed unbearably shallow compared to the deep-rooted peace offered by the Tansu and the unity of his family.
He realized the true terror for Ichisuke wasn't the strange behavior itself. It was the profound, crushing loneliness of being the only one excluded from that unity. To be separate from that collective peace was the ultimate affliction.
So Mr. Watanabe's final assessment moves way beyond simple furniture design. He concluded that the Tansu is not a piece of storage or a stage for a drama. It is an instrument, a focal point.
It's a vessel that, through collective belief and shared history, transcends its physical form, which makes that artifact agency hypothesis the most accurate description of its function.
It really provides undeniable evidence that this highly specific, highly ritualized act, centered on this single domestic object, serves a powerful functional purpose. It regulates the subjective experience of anxiety and existential stress.
The irony is just perfect. The fisherman sought stability in the instability of the ocean.
And the architect found stability in the stillness of the inherited chest. The Tansu represented not just wealth, but ultimate, undeniable grounding.
So, we've journeyed from the distraught petition of a fisherman to the objective log of a ship's captain, and finally, to the intimate journal of an architect who physically replicated the ritual. The Ichisuke incident is just such a powerful challenge to our assumptions about material culture, family dynamics, and even psychology.
It's a profound example of how material culture, in this case, those imposing historical Tansu chests, can anchor incredibly complex psychosocial dynamics. It synthesizes communal stress, spontaneous ritual, and an undeniable shared search for peace.
The true enduring mystery isn't really what they were doing, is it?
No, it's why. Why the physical act of sitting on that specific object unlocked a collective state of unparalleled serenity. A state so compelling it could draw a man back across 15 years and an entire ocean of uncertainty.
And the relevance is so strikingly modern. We are constantly searching for tools to manage anxiety, to find focus. This incident shows us how an ordinary object, imbued with history and collective belief, can be transformed into this highly functional instrument for achieving a specific subjective experience.
An experience that defies purely rational classification, but provides a powerful emotional anchor. The sources consistently suggest that the family's desire was peace, not affliction, and that Ichisuke's return was his recognition of where true belonging and stability really lay.
So we'll leave you with this provocative thought based on the architect's experience and Ichisuke's ultimate choice. If you, the listener, were suffering from that kind of modern anxiety, and you were offered the chance to sit on the Tansu, knowing it required a total surrender to the collective experience and the abandonment of your individual worries, would you accept the invitation to find that deep-rooted peace? Think about what you might have to give up to gain that kind of stillness.
Thank you for taking this deep dive into the Tansu Vigil.